Welcome to Beyond the Lab, a podcast where we talk about people, ideas, and insights in the science industry. So our guest today in Beyond the Lab podcast, a Malaysian student doing a PhD in molecular plant sciences in the University of Edinburgh. She's also currently the Director of Marketing and Outreach in Malaysian Bioscience Scholars. So please welcome Apple Chew. So Apple, you're currently doing a PhD, right? And maybe just run us through your motivations transitioning from degree to PhD, because usually people like me, we just stop at degree and then because we're just tired of studying. So yeah, what pushed you to do a PhD?
So I did my undergrad in York, England, and I also did my master's there. So it's kind of like a 3+1 thing. Mm-hmm. And throughout the 4 years, I've done a lot of internships during the summer, and that helped me, really decide where I wanted to go, after I graduate. So I was there for 4 years, and all of the 4 years I did summer internships, both in industry and academia. And I found out that I didn't really particularly like being in an industry or working in one, because I prefer the freedom in academia, the freedom to be more creative in your experimental designs without money being the limiting factor. And and throughout I've done internships in different labs for 3 years, and I really like doing research, and I did my master's as well, and that really helped me in understanding what I want to do after graduation, and here I am doing my PhD.
Cool. So but money is not limiting in overseas, because usually in Malaysia is the other way around, right? So you guys have like financial constraints, or
I mean, money is a limiting factor in industries when they want to plan for experiments. Usually you have a certain set of goals and you have a certain set of objectives that the company wants to achieve, but you're not allowed to venture into other things that you might want to personally pursue.
So mainly the freedom that to be creative in the research industry, right?
Okay. Yeah, in academia actually. So the freedom to
in academia
be more creative in your experimental design in academia.
So, and as a Malaysian overseas, right? I'm pretty sure, and especially as a woman in STEM, I'm pretty sure there are a few like stereotypes or challenges. Because the time when I was doing a research mobility in like UK, and this lecturer came out to me, and I was talking to him, and I was like, "Your English really good." And I'm like, "Well, okay." So like, I mean, it's not particularly a bad thing, but tell us about like your challenges and stereotypes that you have faced.
So I had that as well. Like, oh, your English is very good. That's obviously kind of like a cultural bias already, and something that you can't avoid. But even ourselves as Malaysian, we do have our own cultural bias. People here, well, they also look at your skin color, assume that you're from China.
Yeah.
As well. But I think the benefit of being a Malaysian is, we came from a multicultural background, and coming overseas, it has given us an advantage to connect with people from different races as well. So I'm quite grateful for that. And the challenges of studying overseas as well, I watched a lot of British movies, so that kind of helped me mitigate culture shock. So I kind of know what to expect. I would say the biggest challenge for me is the Malaysian food.
Oh yeah.
Not being able to bring enough sauces in your luggage. Yeah, and it's not too bad when you have Malaysian friends as well, I would say. So,
how's your team like there? Is it like all Malaysians, or like, is it very diverse? Your research team
in my lab.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, there are no locals at all in my lab. So they're mostly from Europe. There's one from China, one from India, and then that's me.
Okay.
So specifically for Edinburgh, it's quite diverse, I would say, like 50-50 local to international students.
That's good. So let's jump right into your PhD. So your project aim is to like develop better gene editing tools for green microalgae. Is it microalgae? It's microalgae, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So what fascinates you about green microalgae?
So I'm just gonna start off with what is microalgae.
Yeah, sure.
So they're unicellular organisms that are photosynthetic, and they're found in freshwater and marine environments. And because they're so extremely diverse in the tree of life, evolving throughout billions of years, it gives us a diversity in genetics, and as well as the set of molecules they make as well, and different biochemical properties, different metabolic processes, etc. So they're basically just really simple plants that can be used as biofactories, and it kind of contributes to CO2 removal from the atmosphere as well. What fascinates me about it is there are actually a few cool applications for it. So currently, microalgae are used for low volume but high value products. And there's also quite a cool application that I heard in a podcast last month. And this company called Algae Trans is developing microalgae to become an oral vaccine for animal and human health. And this company is actually making a vaccine for COVID-19 in algae. So, no injections needed. You just kind of eat the pill. And apparently they're quite successful. So
that's nice. That's interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, another cool thing about it is it can be used for biophotovoltaics. So because it's photosynthesized, right? It uses sun to produce energy. So they have been used in solar panels. Obviously, the efficiency cannot match current solar panels, but it's quite a cool application that might kick off.
Yeah, probably in the future soon.
Yeah. And there was a big hype about biofuels for microalgae because they're quite oily, small cells.
Yeah.
And but it seems less feasible at the moment because oil prices are at an all-time low. It's at a negative value.
Yeah.
Because of COVID. So.
Yeah. But just dabbling on the oil part, right? Would it be as efficient as like other biofuels like palm oil or like soya oil?
It's so it makes you can make bioethanol with it. You can make biodiesel and different types of oil. And I think palm oil and other oils from food, they are not that clean, so they need a lot of processing to remove other things from the oil to be used in the car, because the engine needs to run really smoothly, and you can't have things like firing at different rates or I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really an engineer, but
okay. So like biofuel from microalgae would be like in a way cleaner.
Yeah, it's cleaner, and you're using free sunlight.
Oh, that's true.
You're capturing carbon dioxide to make fuel. So that's why there was a hype. But large-scale applications are quite hard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's most of biology anyway. There's always nice proof of concept ideas and successes in the lab, but when you move out to the real world,
industrial applications,
yes, they suck.
Yeah.
Full stop. Yeah.
So second part, continue.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So second part of your research is to develop better gene editing tools, right? So what are the caveats or like the disadvantage, or rather what can we improve from current gene editing tools out there?
So for my project, I use CRISPR. Just a short description of CRISPR, they are like scissors, basically. You give them information where they should go, and they are directed to that gene, and they cut the gene, basically. So the CRISPR technology is widely used globally, and it's easy to use, it's cheap, it's affordable, and quite efficient, to be honest. But there are a lot of difficulties in delivering these kind of scissors into the cell. Delivery is quite a big issue and limiting factor of efficiency. And the biggest challenges, I think, is off-target cuts by these kind of scissors in other genes in the genome. And also, like, I'm not even sure whether we know enough of the genome because it's so complicated and an intertwined set of information. And, you know, you might always mess up the epigenetics as well. So it's not just dealing with genes, but there's always other downstream applications that are affected that we might not be aware of. So, and the efficiency, well, basically for my project, I'm trying to increase precise editing as well. So we want to replace genes with specific sequences. And you want them to be 100% correct at 100% efficiency. That's the goal.
So how's that? So how's that going now in terms of progress for research?
Right now for my research, it's not too bad, but it was quite badly affected by COVID-19, I would say. I've only managed to start doing some stuff in August. So hard to say. I'm only in my first year and I still got 3 more years to go. Like, it's not just caveats in the technologies as well that I think everyone should think about. It's also like the ethical and regulatory aspects of genetic modification as a whole. Because we can modify something to become a product, but if no one accepts it, if the public doesn't accept it, like, it will never go into the market.
That's true. What are your views on that, though? Do you think like genetic modification is a bad thing? Because as a biotechnologist, right, and as a student who's like in the bioscience industry, I don't think GMO is all that bad because it's what we've been doing like for millennia, right? We have been changing the genes of plants just 2 different ways, and now we are more technologically advanced. We are using this kind of ways. So what are your views on that?
So I think I would like to start off with, the definition of genetic engineering. So I've Googled 3, and I'm going to quiz you on them and see which one you think is the right one. So number 1, option A. The genetic engineering is the process of adding new DNA to an organism. So B, it's the manipulation of a gene.
Okay.
C is the transfer of DNA from one organism to another. So which one do you think?
I think it's B.
Yes. I would say it's D.
My degree was worth it.
Because I think a lot of people don't understand these differences, and people keep thinking, genetic engineering is adding foreign DNA into an organism. That's not the case. It's basically manipulation of a gene. It could be just changing one nucleotide, and that's genetic modification. And yes, you're right. So plant breeding has always used radiation to induce diversity in the traits that they get in crops. So people are always confused about genetic engineering because of this kind of basic definition that they got wrong. In my opinion, so just to let you guys know that there's actually 2 legal approaches to define GMOs, which is genetically modified organisms. One is called the process-based approach, and the other one is called a product-based approach. So in the US, they follow the product-based approach. So basically, they look at, what is the end product? Is it, if you're doing it in the lab, using CRISPR, let's say editing this gene, and if the end product is the same as, the traditional plant breeding method of using radiation to modify genes, and if the end product is the same or comparable to the traditionally modified one, they do not consider that a GM.
Okay.
But in Europe, it's the process. They emphasize on the process. So as long as you modify the gene, it's GMO. So there are so many naturally existing variations in the wild that we can copy. Sometimes it could be, changing one nucleotide that could give a benefit to this organism. Let's say higher stress tolerance to heat, for example. And because you just need to change this one nucleotide, and you can easily do that in the lab. But in the US, they will accept it and they won't call it a GMO. But in Europe, they will call it a GMO.
Yeah.
So, no, in my opinion, genetic modification is not always bad. If you're introducing foreign DNA into an organism, I think we just have to be more aware and cautious of the potential risk. But if it's just, editing a gene with a few changes to the nucleotide, I don't think they should be considered as GMO, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's also very hard to just draw a line on what is ethical and what's not. So yeah, I think we should really draw a line there. Somebody should, from the scientific community, you come up with something. So was this topic always something that you wanted? This PhD topic?
Well, not really. I think, when you're looking for a PhD project, you don't always get what you want. There's so many choices. You can apply to many, but, what you get is what you get. You can't be picky as well, because, you have to go through interviews, and if you're successful, you get it. If you're not successful, you don't get it. So how I stumbled upon my PhD is that my undergraduate degree was quite vague. It's just biotechnology in general. But I attended an algae conference in London. I didn't have any particular interest in algae, but I just thought it would be cool to go because it was free. So I went. And from there, I sort of met my current PhD supervisor. He was giving a talk, and I found it quite cool. But I never spoke to him. Yeah. So 2 years later, I graduate. I'm almost gonna graduate. I looked on findaphd.com and I saw him advertising a position and the project. And then I just said that, I saw your talk 2 years ago and it was quite cool and I really want to work with you. And we both have to apply for funding.
So is it hard to get, deviating from the list of questions I sent you, right? But is it hard to get funding there to do your research? What's the process
for international students, extremely. For local students, it's quite easy. Well, there's also different types of funding as well. There's funding where they only pay a tuition fee. There's funding where they pay a tuition fee and give you a pocket money every month, a stipend. So it's harder to get the latter, but it is possible. But it's not impossible, but it's just hard.
Difficult.
Very, very difficult. Because applying for international funding as well, you're competing with applicants from all over the globe.
True.
And you really have to stand out.
Yeah.
And just sometimes it's beneficial to have a personal connection beforehand. Usually helps.
Do you have that? Do you have that connection beforehand?
No, I didn't speak to my supervisor when he gave the presentation. But I just said that, I was there. I heard you. I really like what you're doing. And that helped a lot.
Okay. So let's move on to Malaysian Bioscience Scholars, right? So maybe in like a few words, like maybe you can tell us like what is it about and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Malaysian Bioscience Scholars, it was founded in the UK in 2017, so quite young still, so 3 years old. It was initially founded for UK-based Malaysian students to connect them together because we're so spread out and no one knows each other. So this organization was created to reach out to different students in different places in the UK. But this year, we wanted to reach out to Malaysian-based students as well, which we did quite successfully. And basically, the aim of MBios is to enrich the students' experience with events, with debates, with ideas, and career workshops, and many other things as well. And we have members from the States, we have members from Europe, Australia, and Malaysia, as well as New Zealand, and many other places. So we're just kind of like a cultivation hub for everyone to come together and get to know each other.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So since you're like the director of marketing and outreach, right? So like, what's your vision in like the next few years for Malaysian Bioscience Scholars? In terms of like outreach?
It would be nice to have, it would be nice to have different branches, I would say. So maybe a branch in the UK, a branch in Malaysia, a branch in Australia, in the States, and they can all have their own events locally, and that's the goal. So MBios, they change a committee every year, so actually I'm stepping down soon for the new committee, but I hope they can achieve this goal of collecting bioscience students from all over the world. And learning about their experiences. How is it like to study in that country, in that university? And that's what I hope they can become. But it's gonna be a long journey, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I was part of ICMS, International Council of Malaysian Scholar Organization and Associates. Yeah, so I think it took them a few years to really establish in each of the country. And so I think MBios. Is like MBios aiming to be something like that, like ICMS and UKAC, but for the biosciences?
Hopefully, ideally. But if we don't achieve that, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's true. Okay,
we're only a small group of
something fresh for biosciences people, because usually we are just stuck in the lab and stuff like that. It's really, really sad.
Yeah.
So how do you actually juggle? Because you've been having so many meetings. How do you juggle between like MBio and like PhD? And I know you're the editor-in-chief as well for one of the societies there.
I'm the editor-in-chief for Edinburgh's Science magazine, actually. And that role is starting in a month's time. So for the past few months, like that hasn't really affected my time in doing MBios. So how do I balance my time? Good question. Well, I would say COVID really helped in letting me focus more on MBios, because we're at home the whole day, and then we had more ideas for events that we could implement. How do I juggle? I think just time management. It's such a crucial skill.
Yeah,
you just need to have a calendar.
Google Calendars works.
I use a calendar on my phone.
Oh, okay.
But any calendar works, but a calendar is so crucial.
So I think that's all for me. Maybe before we go, any advice for people, especially students in Malaysia that want to pursue their PhD?
Locally or overseas?
Both, I guess.
So quite a general advice then.
Yeah.
I would say do a PhD because you want it, not because your parents tell you to do so, or whether you are pressuring yourself to do just for the sake of I don't want to say this, but I was about to say kissing society's ass, but that's not really appropriate for a podcast. Let me just say that again so you can reuse it. So a general advice from me would be to not pursue a PhD just because someone else told you to do it, not because your parents want you to do it, not because you push yourself or force yourself to do something that you don't want to do. Do it because you want to. If not, you will drop out.
Okay, that's good advice, to be honest. So yeah, yes. I think that's all. So thank you so much for your time, Apple.
No problem.
Thank you for tuning in to the Beyond the Lab podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did making it. So stay tuned for the next one.